There's nothing tougher on your brakes than a long downhill run. This kind of heat can ruin brakes. And if you don't stop soon enough, it can ruin your ride. The good news, of course, is that none of this has to happen. Let's take a look at how to get your truck safely downhill. "40 tons of truck at full speed, that's a load to stop. Your foundation or service brakes at each wheel have a hard job to do, and it's getting harder. Today's vehicles are made to move fast and lean and take even more load. Cabs are sleeker, tires roll easier, lubes are lighter, gear ratios are higher, gross vehicle weights are heavier, and the engines smaller, which means they have less retarding power than ever before. And all these factors have an effect on your ability to brake downhill. Even with all that's happening, your brakes will do the job if you spec them right and work them right. Of course, it's one thing to stop something rolling flat, and quite another when it's running downhill. Slowing today's new vehicles on long downhill runs, or again and again over rolling terrain, can take your brakes to the limit. For many of us, that'll mean adjusting our driving and braking techniques and reducing speeds on downgrades. That's what this tape is about. Now, service brakes are meant to take a lot of heat, but if they heat up too high, like when you use them in the wrong way on long downhill runs, the linings can begin to char and lose some of their stopping power. You feel it as brake fade, having to push harder on the pedal to slow the vehicle. Heat the brakes even higher, and the lining material begins to break down, losing even more stopping power. In time, these overheated brakes just can't slow you down, and it's off to the escape ramp, if you're lucky. What we want to do here is show you how to get safely down to the bottom of that hill or mountain. There are 3 things to learn: how to prepare for a long downhill run, what to watch for and what not to listen to, how to use your engine and transmission to do most of the downhill braking for you, and how to work the brake pedal as you run downhill. Okay, let's hit the road. First, let's look at all the things you should be doing to prepare for a downhill run. For instance, if at all possible, know what you're getting into. If you're heading into mountains or rolling terrain and aren't sure what's ahead, find out. Find out about grades, speed limits, pull-offs, escape ramps, blind curves, construction zones. Find out about the length of downhill stretches. And before you head for the mountains or hills, work through a thorough pre-trip inspection. Whenever you come to a brake check area, use it. In some states, it's the law. On the road, look for warning signs, as we'll see in a minute. And the best preparation for a downhill run is to enter it in the right gear at a safe speed. You see, posted speed limits may not be the right guide for your vehicle and load. To be safe, you'll likely need to run slower, sometimes much slower than posted limits. Finally, when it comes to braking, say thanks, but no thanks to neighborly advice. There are a lot of old trucker tales out there on how to brake on hills. You should rely on the guidelines in this program. It's good advice put together by leading brake experts and truck driving experts. And it could save your brakes, your truck, your load, and your life someday. Learn how to properly brake your vehicle downhill and stick with it. What works for someone else in some other vehicle with some other load may or may not work for you. What all this means is being prepared is the first key to a safe downhill run. Remember, the second is getting your engine and transmission to do most of the braking for you. That means you have to start by entering the run with your vehicle at what's called a control speed. Now, control speed is a safe vehicle speed with the engine just under the governor and your foot off the brake. In other words, you want to find the safest operating speed for your vehicle load and road. And on a downgrade, that speed is just under governed speed, or your engine manufacturer's recommended maximum RPM. The higher the RPM, the more retarding power you have. And this natural retarding effect means you're less likely to overuse your service brakes, because their use will be limited to maintaining control speed. The gear you choose to maintain control speed will depend upon the braking power of your engine and whether you use an engine brake or a driveline retarder on your vehicle. Let's take a closer look. Again, control speed is running just under governed speed in the gear that allows you to balance the pull of your load downhill with the natural retarding effect of your engine. The larger the engine, the greater the braking effect. The smaller the engine, the less it can help you slow your truck on a downhill run. Engine compression brakes and driveline retarders act to increase this braking power and are highly recommended on mountainous driving. Running at control speed sets you up to limit the use of your service brakes to just what's necessary to keep your vehicle from accelerating. This is important. Get your vehicle under control with the right gear for your load, engine size, and any driveline retarders on board. Then, as your vehicle tends to gain speed, maintain control by using your brakes. Running at control speed or in balance allows you to use your service brakes sparingly, maintaining their braking power for the entire run. New drivers or veteran drivers in new vehicles often ask the same question: how do I know the right gear for a downhill run? Many pros recommend that you enter the run by selecting a gear 1 or 2 gears lower than the gear you would use to pull the same load up the same grade. Now, this may put your vehicle under posted speed limits. That's okay. Choosing too high a gear, even posted speeds, could mean you won't have the retarding power you need to run at control speed. That means as you accelerate downhill, you're moving toward a constant overuse of your service brakes and ultimately loss of braking power. The pros also emphasize that you should shift into the right gear before you begin the run. Downshifting on a downgrade will throw the transmission into neutral, which will cause you to accelerate. When you're downshifting, you need to be decelerating. So if you're accelerating, it'll be difficult, if not impossible, to get into a lower gear or even back into the same gear. And that puts you in danger of losing control of your vehicle. Okay, let's burn all this onto the screen. As you enter an extended downhill run, get your vehicle at control speed. That is, select a gear that balances the pull of your load downhill when running your engine just under governor. Use any onboard engine brakes and retarders. If you don't have one, face it, you may find yourself going down severe grades at 10 to 15 miles an hour. For many of you, that's uncomfortably slow, but it beats a ride down the escape ramp. Next, choose 1 or 2 gears lower than what you would use for the same load up the same slope. And once under control, stay under control by using your service brakes. Okay, so far we've learned that to run safely downhill, you need first to be prepared, and second, to get your engine and transmission to do most of the braking for you by entering the downgrade at a safe control speed and using your service brakes or retarder to maintain control. The third key is proper braking technique, so let's look at that. Many drivers have learned to run downhill with a slight constant pressure on the brake pedal, just enough to keep the vehicle at the safe operating or control speed. Testing by the Federal Highway Administration indicates that this slight steady pressure, called dragging, tends to make some brakes work harder than others, and those that work the hardest tend to overheat. The problem is in how brake systems work. Even newly adjusted brakes tend to apply at slightly different air pressures, and when pedal pressure is slight, as it is when dragging, not all brakes work with the same force. On a long downhill run, that can mean that some brakes, those working the hardest, will heat up to over 1,000 degrees, temperatures at which linings, drums, and brake pads can be permanently damaged. These temperatures can even lead to fires. As an alternative to dragging brakes downhill, use a moderate stabbing method, what's known as snubbing. With snubbing, the driver applies the brakes with enough force to reduce vehicle speed 5 miles per hour under control speed in about 3 seconds. Should the vehicle accelerate back up to control speed, he repeats the snub. Let's look at that again. The driver applies enough pressure to reduce vehicle speed 5 miles per hour under the control speed in about 3 seconds. Think of it as the 5-3 rule. As the truck accelerates, the driver repeats the snub as often as necessary to maintain control speed through the run. Snubbing should also be used when running through rolling terrain. Why does snubbing work better than dragging? The key is that snubbing sends enough air pressure to each brake to make them work more evenly. And while they might heat up, they don't tend to get as hot as they would when dragging brakes. The result is less chance of overheating, a safer ride, longer brake lining life, less downtime, lower maintenance costs. Now, snubbing your brakes downhill may be new to you, but it has been proven to be the best way to maintain downhill control. So let's burn that in. On long downhill runs and rolling terrain, snub rather than drag your service brakes. That is, remember the 5-3 rule. Apply enough brake pressure to lower vehicle speed 5 miles an hour below control speed in about 3 seconds. Repeat the snub as necessary to maintain control. And we recommend snubbing your service brakes whether or not your truck is equipped with an engine brake or other retarder. Now some final thoughts. First, even with the best techniques, there's always room for common sense. Whenever you're pulling a load on a tough or hilly run, be especially alert. Do you see any smoke? Watch for gawkers watching you. Keep the CB open for another driver's warning. Sometimes your brakes simply need to rest. If you feel a fade or receive some kind of warning, pull off and check it out. In these situations, we recommend cooling your brakes at least 30 to 40 minutes. Second, some vehicles are equipped with a hand valve that activates the trailer-only brakes. Don't use trailer-only brake systems to control vehicle braking. That's the fastest way to smoke these brakes. Okay, let's look quickly at what we've learned. When driving hills and mountains, learn what you can about what's ahead. Check your vehicle before you start a long downgrade, whether or not the law requires you to do it. Watch for warning signs. Remember that posted speeds are maximums, and often not what's the safest speed for your vehicle and load. Leave the CB on for warnings, but when it comes to braking, thank them for their advice, but keep to what you know. A safe ride begins by getting your truck under control before you head downhill. Bring your truck to a safe downhill speed by keeping the engine just under governed speed and selecting the appropriate gear given your engine and load and any engine brake or other retarder you use. To maintain control downhill, snub your brakes. That is, apply enough pedal pressure to reduce vehicle speed 5 miles per hour under control speed in about 3 seconds. It's the 5-3 rule. Repeat the snub as necessary to maintain control. And finally, use common sense. Even with the best technique, your brakes may sometimes need a rest. And remember, it could take up to 30 to 40 minutes to cool brakes properly. Downhill braking? Not a problem. If you prepare, control, snub. 3 words you can run with.